Hi everyone. So I wanted to do a video discussing and sharing, most importantly, sharing my own personal realizations and observations that I can apply practically to my life from watching the movie musical My Fair Lady, which was shot many years ago, maybe like 30 years ago or so. And it stars Audrey Hepburn and this other actor. And basically, while I was watching it, my experience in the first like 80% of the movie, 80%, 90% was like mostly like not liking it, because I was seeing this some of the characters were very selfish, mean, being like a bully, aggressive, very divisive, very much an ego. Um, but before I've tried watching this movie and I stopped halfway through it, but I decided yesterday to watch it because I want to see how it ends, right? And it is supposedly a great movie, so you know, so I wanted to watch it to the end. So that's what I did. This time I did start from the beginning, um, and I would skip some parts if I already knew it was going to happen. So yeah, so then I sort of just watched it to try to learn something new, to try to understand the plot of the movie, where is it going, the themes of it. There were themes of poverty, and like poverty and being wealthy, class distinction, which I found really interesting. Also, as well, I studied linguistics. I took a year's worth of classes within linguistics. So I was able to relate to the professor in the movie, who's a professor of language, of linguistics, who studies the phonetics and sounds of language. So I was already able to relate to him within that study because it involves actually writing out the sounds of words. So you're able basically have a set alphabet, a universal alphabet of sounds, of symbols that describe sounds that you can use to describe every single word in every single language, because it all focuses on how the word is sounded, how it's pronounced. And so therefore they even have distinct differences when describing how a person says the same word um, differently. And that usually you see within accents or dialects, where within the same language, for instance, within English, you can have many, many different dialects. One obvious difference is between American English and British English. That obviously is a huge, much more obvious distinction, but you can also look at all the various different dialects within the UK, United Kingdom, or within the United States as well. Let's say that you have a Southern accent, you have all sorts of different accents: the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, and there are professors, people who research this and study that, and their research can be applied for various practical purposes, such as if you want to learn a certain accent or you want to learn to pronounce words. That's who this professor was in this movie. Other people, they can, I guess now the big things with technology, we're able to, how computers can recognize sounds and be able to speak sounds correctly within a language. And so obviously they're using the research that linguists have been using have been doing for a very long time, as well as it's useful within understanding new languages, to understand how new languages are. If you don't know, like if let's say you have a new language you're exposed to that no one else in the world knows about, you found like some group of people who speak a unique language. The whole process of understanding their language, how it works, its structure, that there's techniques that they study and how to do that. And so that's one example. So, so I was able to relate very much to the professor in that sense. Now, for me, there's some cool parts in the movie. Um, there's one part where the professor was basically taking, the girl, which is the main plot line, that he's taking this girl from the streets who, has, let's say, horrible accent, from a certain perspective, I guess from society's perspective, where, she wouldn't be able to get a well-paying job because of her accent, because she wanted to work in a well-paying position, she would need to sound well, you could say sound educated. And so that's kind of like, let's say, the plot of the movie, where he has to like take her, or he wants to take her like to transform her, let's say transform her speech. That's the basic plot line of the movie, and it shows a lot of differences and also obstacles and challenges for people in different, let's say, class distinctions, where how people speak when they're educated or not educated, that kind of perception, where we will judge people a certain way because of that, or we will deny them opportunities or give them opportunities because of how they sound, how they speak, which in some cases it can make perfect sense, of course, because it's about understanding another person. Like, that's for me the very most practical point, is to be able to understand another person clearly when they're speaking. That can have a huge impact within a workplace environment where you're talking with someone and they need to understand you clearly, right? That's a very basic point of communication between any person. So that's the first thing, right? That's something that's practical. Of course, there's the other side where, what about the whole like point of having, let's say, an emotional reaction to that kind of person, like having antagonism, aggression, like the whole ego point of superiority, inferiority, instead of actually finding the point of, okay, well, how can we make things practical? How can we support and do what's best for everyone? So, that was kind of like, let's say, the undertone of the movie that was present there throughout the movie. Now, the rest of the movie was, let's say, a typical movie in terms of, presenting women as their appearance being what's valued, being very ladylike. That was, let's say, taken for granted because that's what society's acceptance is. So there you go. But then, I was looking for, okay, like, how's the movie gonna end, right? Because here you're at this point where the professor was treating the woman, very badly in terms of not recognizing her value, not recognizing her, who she is. And she was kind of like, okay, well, I've had enough, I'm gonna leave now. And so she left, which I thought was cool, right? Okay, she left, she stands up for herself. And of course, she's going through her own process, because she kind of always accepted that point, and now she's challenging that and standing up for who she is and what she will accept and allow from the people around her. And for me, what was the most satisfying point of the movie was, of course, in the last, I guess, 10 minutes of the movie, which is, it's kind of like, I guess, like a real conclusion, I guess, a real ending, I guess, where where basically the professor, he wants to look for the girl because she leaves him, or she leaves his residence. She goes off somewhere else, and he's looking for her because I guess he misses her. And so and then he finds her, and then they basically have a conversation. But basically, she's standing from a point of of self-respect, of self-honoring, where before, if you saw it before in the movie, she was, whenever he was, let's say, mean to her, she would react. She would scream, she would cry, she would whine, she would enter into a reactive state when he was mean to her. But now at the end of the movie, after her, let's say, her transformation, her own reflection, her own looking at herself, when he was being insulting to her, let's say she was being the better person. She was taking the high road. She had self-control. She had self-respect. She knew who she was. She wasn't reacting, and she wasn't accepting anything less than who she knows she is. And so that's basically what she stood within as she responded to him. And there's that last musical, which is the last song that she sings in the movie, her song. And basically, she sings that part, sings that number where it's about that, just what I said, where it's about who she is, what she'll accept and allow. And the song was actually quite funny because it was basically about how the whole world does not revolve around this guy. How if he were to die, if this professor were to die, the whole world will keep on spinning. Everything will continue just the way it was. And for me, that's a really great song about ego, about showing how exposing ego, where it's like for any one of us, the whole world will continue without us. The whole world will continue spinning. Everything will continue growing. Life goes on without us individually because that's how things are. And it's about challenging that whole idea of self-importance and the ego that we're so greater, we're so superior. And it's about creating that humility and understanding. And obviously finding that basic honoring, respect, and appreciation of how much life gives to you. So, that was her song, and she stood within who she was. She didn't, let's say, need him. And you could see, and she was very clear about how she wanted him to be better as a person. And she wouldn't accept anything less than that. And so that's where she drew the line. And when she expressed herself fully like this, what was funny as well was that he responded immediately with loving how she was, saying that he loves how she's standing up. She loves this kind of woman who stands up for herself, who's, etc. He enjoys who she is being right now, within this, let's say, bravery, within this honesty, intimacy, standing. And then, of course, she says goodbye and she leaves because, he needs to figure out who he is. And, of course, he has his last number, let's say, he sings the last song where he's basically reflecting on that point. And, of course, the lyrics are, the lyrics he sings are still focus a lot on her voice, how she sounds, on her face. It would have been great if he would have sang about her standing, who she is, etc., which he didn't sing about. He sang more of superficial features. But this is humanity, human consciousness. So what can you expect? But everything I saw so far was great, And the movie ends with him being, let's say, more gentle. Like his last song was more gentle, more sweet. He was giving in, let's say. Because before, for the rest of the movie, he was really aggressive, really angry, really, tough. At the end, he was, let's say, going to, submissiveness or humbleness or gentleness, willing to be intimate, relaxed. And then the movie is basically, like, let's say the last 2 seconds is basically her showing up at the door with him listening to the recording of, her voice of the very first time. I just realized this right now, that when at the very last seconds of the movie, he was putting on the recording of the very first time she showed up, and she was speaking with, let's say, her horrible accent. With her, which he said was like horrible, he hated it, basically. But, he was listening to it because he wanted to, remember her, I guess. And I guess that says something because, before he hated her accent, then he misses her horrible accent, which that was the most prudish thing he was about. He hated that so much, etc. So, that's like a cool, like, symbol, I guess, like symbology there where, recognizing, well, it's not about how she sounds, it's about more who she is kind of thing. Maybe, like a hint towards that. So that was, cool. I just realized that right now. But, then, of course, she walks in and then she turns off the record and she, says it with her accent, her old accent. I forget if I actually said that this movie is about her changing her old accent to, let's say, a proper accent or a more higher class distinction accent. Hopefully I said that in the beginning of this vlog, but maybe I didn't, I'm not sure. But okay, but basically that was the movie, and he ended with, you know, being willing to, let's say, open to consider changing. That's something at least, but, you know, of course it would be great if there's more of that, but obviously it's a story. You can't expect 2 hours to, you know, share like some great, you know, a life full of life's lessons, basically. So I really just focus on this one life lesson of, like, you know, the value of a person. And the first 90% of the movie was focused on things was already accepted, already common, really just how things are, very much. And the last 10% was about the change, like, you know, how can things change? And they did show the change. And I think that's what makes make it a great movie, because it, you know, it challenges everything else in the movie, the first 90% of the movie, and it puts something there that is about self-growth, self-expansion, about change, which is very much how our lives go, where usually we go through a whole bunch of horrible shit, and only then do we change it. And then when we actually change it, we realize it wasn't really as tough. You know, yes, it takes, I mean, to change like 1 point, but I mean, I know change takes many years, but if you really look at the grand scheme of things, you know, the vast majority of things that we go through, the amount of time it really takes to change is very little. It's very much like 10%. But of course, you have to put that in perspective of our lives we lived so far, the lives of the past generations, the lives of humanity. You know, if you consider things more from a past perspective, I guess, from generations ago, you know, human beings haven't really changed their nature. But all it takes is just like 7 years or 14 years, you know, of a person's life. If they dedicate to change themselves completely, that's all it takes, you know? It's really not that long, like, really, compared to everything humanity has gone through, everything we have gone through. So, I mean, yeah, like, if you're at, like, for example, if you're watching the movie, like how I reacted initially to it was like, I'd want to watch this because it's just so much ego, so mean, etc. It's like so horrible. But you know, you just have to keep pushing through. You have to keep going through it. You have to keep going until the end of it, and just that's how things work in life. Where, you know, you may think like, oh, it's too much. You know, it's like, oh, it's so much work, so much time, but it's really not. But we make it so because, I don't know, it's a lie, so what can I say? So, it's just a self-sabotage, really. So another thing I took from the movie, as well, is, for me, I'm going to, again, continue practicing speaking. And now I was practicing today, and I realized something where when I speak or if I sing, when the air leaves my mouth, when the air leaves my body, it's like a continuous stream of air. Like, it's like one exhalation when I speak. And then I have a pause, right? But when I speak still, or if I sing, it's like about one exhalation of breath, complete exhalation of breath. And for me, imagine like if you chisel a statue, right? You have a block of marble, and so you have like a stream of air. It's like perfectly, like a perfect cylinder of air coming out. And what the mouth and tongue does, it is shapes and sculpts the air as it comes out of your mouth. So obviously, if I exhale, it's just air, right? So I have to literally use my mouth, my tongue, my lips to shape and form the air. And so what I have to focus here in this part of my face, when I speak is simply to, let's say, cut the words, to actually chisel and pronounce the sounds of the words. And when it comes to the air, like controlling the air, air just needs to be flowing and stable. That's it. And all it does, in doing that, my voice becomes louder. I project more, and so that's how it works. So I'm figuring this point out, which I haven't really figured this out yet. I have spent many years throughout my life working on this, and I've practiced a lot, tried a lot of different things. But this is a new realization I'm having, so I'm sharing that and I'm applying it. And yeah, so my lungs, all they do is push out the air. My vocal cords, they just open up and let the air come through. And my it just stays stable basically most of the time. If I'm speaking, it stays stable. And my lips, my mouth, my tongue, I focus on them to make sure that they are precise and specific. Because what I notice is I tend to keep my mouth closed, and now what I'm trying to do is drop my jaw more and give more space to let the air come out. So that's what I've been practicing. So, yeah. So, My Fair Lady. So, actually, it's a really great, let's say, feminist movie. But obviously, for me, I consider whether male or female, it doesn't really matter. It's about standing up for yourself, empowerment, because it's a human thing. So, watch it and see what you can learn. Have fun. I watch online for free. There's this website where they show classic cinema movies for free. So it's not torrented, it's just a website that shows classic movies for free. So you can watch online. So check it out. Just put in "Watch My Fair Lady" Google, and you'll find it. So thank you very much. Bye.